service is doing. But that is what brings us to a close. We now want to go to our next segment, which is our first interview of the day. And even as we await to hear what the president will say in regards of updating the country on the way forward, and as we await to hear his speech on whether or not he will reopen the economy, the question that still lies is, will church reopen feature in that in that speech? And that is what we want to discuss this morning. Joining me live, that is from Nakuru County, Bishop Mike Browan of the Metro Church in Nakuru County. Bishop Mike, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Doreen. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning to you too. Now, the question that many Kenyans are asking is that there are those that are for the church to be reopened. There are those that are against that church reopening. What are your thoughts in all of this, Bishop?
My thought on this is that it's a high time the church to be reopened, since we are going to have this problem for a long time, because COVID is not yet ready to go. It's going to be there. So we need to start working how we can live and discipline ourselves to live within the way it is and follow the rules that we are being given. So I think as we are opening other economical things that we are trusting the president to open, I think it's a high time also for the church to be reopened.
Okay, it's a high time for the church to be reopened. That is what you're saying, Bishop Mike. But there's that question of these guidelines and protocol. Maybe you can just break it down for us from a bishop point of view. What are some of these guidelines and protocols that the church has set, even as we await for what the president might say today?
Okay, some of the guidelines which are very, very important, because the truth is, people should know Corona is real, because there was a misconception. People think it's just a myth, but it is very real. So one of the things is that a church should have all the instruments that are needed to test the temperature, and people can also record it, just the way they have said we need to get the people social distancing, which is the most important, even now and even after everything is back to okay. People need to wash their hands, which is the most important thing than maybe anything else. And not just because of Corona, because this has helped for many, many other things. So with that, and we follow the rules whereby they say maybe things that people share together, like shaking hands, things like hugging or laying of hands, things that they have put aside, those ones can be worked out very well. So those are some of the conditions. That baptism should be suspended, especially for those who are being baptized in the same baptism pool or something like that. The children who are below 2 years old, they should stay home. And also the elderly people who are very, very old, that maybe their health is not that good. So that, and then we can do that 1 meter. But the main thing that is so important is that even when people are coming, they must come with their face mask, with the mask, because it's very, very important. And just follow the other original rules, whereby if you have to sneeze, you have to sneeze through your elbow. And if people follow that, and the church is ready, because it cannot be as dangerous as the hotel or other places, because when you're in a hotel, you can't use a face mask. You have to open it to eat. But here we can still use it, because people are very, very discouraged, and now they need encouragement. And the only way they can get that encouragement is to turn to the church. And so those are some of the rules, and churches are working out to wash hands and getting the things. In fact, even us today, we are supplying some of those things to the churches that they don't have. We have been able to try to help some churches that need things like thermal temperature. They want to measure temperature, and we are ready to support them, so that at least we have church, and then from there, because this thing will be with us maybe for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think also the school in the near future, they should just start thinking a way to open these things back, because we have no time limit. We have no time that we have been told by this will go on.
Now, Bishop Mike, all the guidelines and protocols that you're mentioning, even as a church leaders, of wearing a face mask, ensuring that people wash their hands, they're just in line with the Ministry of Health guidelines. But now the question stands is, how practical is that going to be, especially for these faithfuls?
Yeah, the truth is that it will be practical because people have missed the church. And the worst place you can ever go anywhere, it is if you are to go to the market, and you will still see people are still managing to do things in the market, especially if you visit our market here, you will be shocked. But now I'm not just trying to compare the church with the market. I know people will follow it because we can have short services with a few people so that you can have as many people as possible, but they keep the social distancing. I think it's a high time the church will pursue. They will have to follow the rules because when we were told to close down, we did close down. And now that we did close down, I think now the government should also give us the benefit of doubt and allow us now, and pastors be ready to take care of everything and follow every guidelines according to the Ministry of Health, and to make sure, because this is to endanger or to make our people healthier and happy. So it's a two-way thing, because whenever we don't have people in church, there are many things that kills them worse than even corona. There is depression. There is kind of oppression that they're going through. But at the same time, I want Kenyan to know corona is there, it's real, it's gonna be with us maybe for some time. We need to manage ourselves, and we don't need to be forced. This has been a mistake we have been going through, that whenever something is good for Kenyans must be enforced, and police use all this force. We can rule ourselves, and we can control and obey everything as obedient people.
Right. You sound very optimistic that when the churches reopen, that Kenyans will follow these protocols and these guidelines that have been set. Now, let's come to you specifically as a bishop of the Metro Church in Nakuru. What are some of the guidelines that you have set in your own church? For instance, if they reopen, that things are going to be safe for Kenyans there.
By the way, thank you so much for that question, because what we have done already, so far we have already prepared our church in a way that if it is open even tomorrow, we can show the world that we are following every rules and every law. As I've said, we have bought even the equipment to test. Even other day when people come to get some help, like we give some food sometimes, they have to be tested, they have to wash their hands, they have to sanitize, we give masks, and we have even bought masks as a church so that just in case somebody will come without the mask, we can even offer them. And we have put the social distancing in our seats to make sure that in a normal service when we can have 2,000 people, in this particular service we can have 200 or 300. We cannot go beyond that, because that's the only way we can make sure people sit in the right distance. The choir, we are reducing the choir so that the choir can be a maximum choir that can sing in the same way. And we have also bought microphones that are sanitizable, whereby we can clean them, we can sanitize them immediately, because even every equipment must be sanitized before that. And we have bought the washing, both in the toilets and even whenever people come to the church, they will have to wash their hands. And we have set a room just in case we have someone that needs to be given an emergency or to be taken out maybe because of that. We have nurses that we will be hiring. At least every Sunday, we will have a nurse that is steady, and we will have a vehicle that is also ready in case of anything. And I think our people, when they come, they will be very, very safe. That one I can assure.
Now, clearly, you really put in place the guidelines for the reopening of the church. That is actually the church gets to be reopened, and also put in place guidelines in your own specific church, that is in Metro Church in Nakuru County. Thank you so much, Bishop Mike, for your time.
Thank you, Doreen. God bless you. Bye-bye.
I appreciate. Now, that has been Bishop Mike Brower from Nakuru, just talking to us on some of the guidelines that probably the church has put in place, and also that he himself as a bishop, he has put in place for in the instance that probably the president today, even as he delivers his speech on whether or not churches will be reopened. But Reggie, coming to you, when you look at the church and also what the bishop has said, that, you know, in an instance where a church carries a capacity of about 2,000, then they'll ensure that at least they have 200 or even 300 people. And Kenya would want to ask the question, how practical will that be? Because how then would you ensure that you only have 3 members in a church, 300 members in a church that carries 2,000 members?
That will be a tall order, if you ask me, because most churches, even in this time, even before coronavirus, had different, services, staggered services, different timings, so that they could, accommodate their congregation. So now, with this COVID-19 issues, then how will you then, work around just that schedule to accommodate everyone? And how will you know that we are 100? Will we all get to the entrance and then be turned back? I think from where I sit, I think it's too early to start thinking about easing these measures, especially where social gatherings are concerned. Given that report, or rather just something that has been quoted, let me just bring you to speed, or rather point you to this article that says, bad manners to blame for a sharp rise in new cases. This is according to the Ministry of Health, and says that in the press, the CAS, that is Rashid Aman, said that the cases increased on average of 146 cases per day between June 14th and June 20th, while from June 21st to June 27th, the average of daily cases were 190. Between June 28th and July 4th, the cases jumped exponentially to an average of 261 cases daily. This is proof that our cases are rising and the curve is beginning to become stiff. These rising infections imply that many more people will require critical care and our healthcare facilities risk being overwhelmed. Quoted there is the CAS Rashid Aman. Now, in the past few weeks also, we've seen political gatherings have increased, while there are increasing cases of Kenyans bribing their way through roadblocks to cross over into or out of closed counties of Nairobi and Mombasa. As such, these practices require personal responsibility by all of us. The expectation is to have an enforcement officer to police every person is not possible. We must therefore rise up to the occasion and be responsible citizens. That is what CAS Rashid Aman had to say yesterday in regard to just that steep rise in COVID-19 cases. Well, as Kenyans are waiting the presidential address in regard to just easing or not easing on lockdown measures, what we need to remember that we need to be responsible individuals, Doreen, because if we say we open up today, for instance, just today, we say that we've eased movement. Most people, what I expect, especially those living within urban areas, would want to move from these areas because from urban or the city and the towns, would want to go back to Gishagi, or what you call the rural areas, because the cost of living is very high within the CBD.
Exactly.
Right now, people have lost their jobs. Income is not flowing as it should. So most people will have a tendency of going back. As we say, tunarudi nyumbani, tunarudi mashambani. And yet, these are the counties that you're talking about that are ill-prepared to tackle this issue of COVID-19. What happens to the elderly that we have back at home, our grandparents and our fathers and mothers, who are elderly? So for me, I think it's too soon to open up. That's my opinion. And also, given the current the cases that we're having right now, I don't think it would be prudent. So I'm also waiting to see how the president is going to balance out, ensuring that the economy continues to run as well as, stemming the spread of COVID-19, since almost all counties have at least one case of COVID-19. Doreen, I don't know, what is your take in regard to these issues?
Ray, you have raised so many issues and pertinent issues, because you've just mentioned the preparedness even of the health systems in our counties. And we also had a similar story this morning when you're looking at what was happening in the dailies in terms of in the headlines, looking at how counties are not that prepared at a point where we are almost inching the 8,000 mark. You can imagine, as of now, almost 8,000 confirmed cases, but even at that, still counties in the country are not prepared to deal with the surge of these numbers. And then you might just wonder, in as much as yes, you really want and anticipate and are waiting, eagerly waiting for what the president will say in regards of updating the country on the way forward, and also as we await for him to, on whether he will reopen or not reopen, there's still that there's still that case, because as of now, things are a bit closed, and this is how much we are recording in terms of numbers. So what if actually the country is reopened? And then also, to go to an extent further, what if the churches are reopened? We're just having that conversation earlier on with Bishop Mike in terms of ensuring that all these protocols and guidelines are put in place. But the question still remains, and the question still lingers: how practical will these guidelines be? Remember that it's been over 3.5 months, at least as of now, since since the churches were closed, and people have also missed each other. And we are Africans, we are Kenyans. Sometimes you don't even think about that disease. Once you see, someone you're used to, we are so easy to want to hug and shake hands. So the question still remains is, how practical will these protocols, when you talk about wearing of masks, when you talk about washing hands, when you talk about sanitizing, when you talk about social distancing, even in the churches, this question is still, how practical will this be? And again, there was also that question of a church that has about 2,000 to 3,000 members. How will you ensure that in every Sunday, at least only 200 members or 300 members can come in? And Regina, you also mentioned that, will it be a question of, will you be turned away the moment you come, you come inside? So this are some of the questions that we need to be asking ourselves, even as we anticipate and await for what the president will say today as he updates us on the way forward.
Very well said. Doreen, those are issues that are going to be highlighted in the course of the day. Yeah, on the course of the day, just focusing on the...
Exactly. And even as you just try to get your son, again, these are some of the questions that we keep asking ourselves as Kenyans. Yes, we are eager, we are waiting. There are also those in rural areas who were locked out at that time when the president announced the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi, as well as the other specified counties. And there were those that had been locked out of Nairobi, bearing in mind that some had left their families here. Of course, there are some that had left their children. We also had a similar story this morning on the Standard, where there was a lady who was just feeling and wanting the president to just open so that she can come from the rural setup, come to Nairobi to just see her kid. But again, the question still remains, if that happens, how will we ensure that we control these numbers which are rising so steadily, which are rising so fast? That is still a question that we are continuously, we are continuing to ask ourselves. Again, also when it comes to the churches, because that's the conversation we were having, there has also been that question of numerous pastors. We have seen pastors, preachers, and even bishops in some parts of the country, in different counties, just really pushing forward for these churches to be opened. And a question that Kenyans have been asking across boards is that, is it really that they really want these churches to be open, or some are just out here because of the tithes and offerings and then Thanksgiving seeds? So these are again some of the questions that Kenyans have been asking. Yes, they are pushing forward for the churches to be open, but what exactly is the main motive? Is it just for the spiritual nourishment? Is it just for the spiritual growth? Or there's another issue such as paying of tithes, such as offering? So again, also these are the things that we're trying to look at, because again, also Kenyans are saying that what is really there's so much need of opening churches when throughout this entire period things have been running online. We have seen a majority of churches conducting their services, even having these gatherings online where there's a pastor or on Facebook Live or even on Instagram. So again, the question still remains that we are pushing so much for these churches to be reopened. What has been happening all throughout these 3 months? Things have been running and happening online. So again, also one thing that Kenyans are asking is that why can't that just continue? Why can't we just continue doing things online? So yes, you are waiting to see what the president will say. We are waiting to see what the president will update us going forward. But even as we await the president's speech and update, we are still waiting to see whether churches will be reopened. We want to take a very short break, but we'll be back with more, so stay with us.